In this video, I'm going to be showing you a way to enrich your data within Google Analytics so that you can build more sophisticated audiences. It all starts with an upload file which contains one row per user and all the attributes about that user you want to import. You then drag it into a cloud storage bucket which sets off a whole automated process which ends up with several events being fired into Google Analytics via the measurement protocol, and all those attributes are then attached to the appropriate users within Google Analytics. You can see we've given each user a segment which we've calculated offline here, and we can therefore build audiences based on the value of that variable. This video will be particularly useful if you have hundreds and thousands of customers where you need to set these values on a daily or even hourly basis. The end-to-end solution we're going to set up looks like this. First of all, we'll have a file which contains a list of Google client IDs or cookie IDs and whatever attributes we want to associate with a particular user. You'll then drag this file into cloud storage, which will begin a whole sequence of processes. The first thing it does is a cloud function will be monitoring this cloud storage bucket, and whenever it sees a new file uploaded, it will take that file, it will strip it into individual lines and send each one to the pub/sub message queue, where a final set of cloud functions will pick up those messages and route them into Google Analytics via the measurement protocol. Now, this whole process does sound quite complicated, especially if you're new to Google Cloud, but luckily the clever engineers at Google have an unofficial product which deals with the middle sequence there, right from cloud storage to cloud functions and pub/sub. And this product is unofficially known as Google Tentacles, and it's what I'm going to be showing you how to set up right now. The first step is to create a custom dimension within Google Analytics. So head into the property that you're going to be using. Click the red Create New Custom Dimension button, and you're going to call it Segment, and make sure you set the scope to be User. Once you're done, click Create, and this will then return you a dimension index slot number. You'll need to remember this number for use later on in the tutorial. The next step is to create an audience in Google Analytics, and you do this in the same way you'd create any other segment. Call this one Highly Likely to Buy. Head into the segment builder, and under conditions you're going to select that custom dimension which we just created and set it to exactly matches the word high. Don't forget to change the filter settings to target users rather than sessions. At the moment there is no data in this account because we've only just created this dimension, so you won't see any audience size. Click apply, change any of the membership duration settings that you want, and then proceed to the next step, a destination to send this audience to. If you were doing this for real, you'd probably send it to Google Ads or Google Optimize or DV360, but in my case, I'm just going to send it to Google Analytics. Once you're done, hit publish and the audience has been created. In a browser, open the GitHub Google Tentacles project. This has got the whole sequence of events that we need to go through in order to get this up and running. I'm going to go through most of them now, but you will need it open just so you can copy and paste a few things. Scroll down to the list of contents and you'll see that step 1 is to create a Google Cloud project where all your cloud functions and pub/sub and cloud storage are going to live. So head over to your Cloud Console and create a new project. I'm going to give mine a name of Google Tentacles, but feel free to use whatever you want. You can also create this in an existing project, but if you're just testing this out, I would recommend a new project. Once you're done, head back to the GitHub page and copy the step under 2.3, and then go back to your window and open the active cloud shell. What you're going to do is when it loads, you're going to paste in the command which clones the GitHub repository and brings all the code you need into your local directory. If you have a look, you'll see it would have created a Cloud for Marketing folder. You want to CD into that, going all the way down into Marketing Analytics and then Activation. Finally, head into the GMP Google Ads connector and hit ls, and you'll see all the files that are there. We now run bash deploy.sh, which starts the setup script. Along the way, you'll be asked various things. First up, we have the name of the project into which you're going to be installing everything. This is just the default one which we created, so you can just hit return to accept the default. You also get to choose which region you want to install your cloud functions into. You can either accept the default or choose your own and hit Y to carry on with the installation. You'll be asked which API you want to integrate with. Google Tentacles supports 5 or 6 even different APIs, but we want to integrate with the measurement protocol. I would recommend you also select data import as well, just in case you need it in the future. So type 0, 1 and hit enter. The script then goes through the process of making sure it has access to all the APIs it needs, as well as permissions to create the cloud functions and create a data store and so on and so forth. It then goes through and enables all the APIs it needs. And then you get to the point where you need to specify the cloud storage bucket into which you want Tentacles to work. So again, you can hit enter to choose the default one or type your own name if you want to specify a particular bucket in your cloud storage that you have already. It'll also ask you for the name of the folder you want in that cloud storage bucket where you're going to put your files to be processed. I recommend leaving it as outbound. Here you can configure your pub/sub topic name, keep it as default, and you can also select yes to create the config file. You'll be asked to create a service account because we selected data import as one of the channels. This is so that you can add this URL or this email address to your GA account and give Tentacles permission to upload files should you ever want to use data import. Hit yes to download the service key, which you may or may not need in the future. And then finally, the script will go through and create the 3 cloud functions you need. The first one looks for changes in the storage bucket, and it takes the input file and sends it to pub/sub. The second one then routes the input to the other cloud function or to the right topics in pub/sub, and then the final cloud function picks up the output of pub/sub and sends it into the channel that it is being directed to, in our case, the measurement protocol. Once that's done, you'll be asked to create a database in Firestore or Datastore. This is where our config settings are going to be stored. So click the link in the Google Cloud console, and that'll take you to this page. Select native mode in Firestore, choose a region where you want to create your database, and hit the Create Database button. Once you're done, head back to the console and you can continue on by pressing any key. The cloud functions, the storage bucket, and pub/sub are now all set up and ready, but we have to set up a few more things in a config file so that when any requests are dropped into the bucket, the Google Tentacles knows where to route them. So copy the config_api.json.template file and rename it to config_api. You then need to edit this file, so either you can use VI, or you can use Cloud Console Editor. I'm using the Cloud Console Editor here for ease of readability. Drill down into the folder, back into Marketing Analytics Activation, all the way down, and find that file you just created called config_api. Now this file contains lots of different settings because it is the standard template, but we don't need a lot of these. All we need is the stuff that deals with the measurement protocol. So you're going to delete a lot of these sections. You're going to delete the section that's in CM, which stands for Campaign Manager. If you're using Campaign Manager, obviously you can keep that active, but we haven't set that up. And you also need to delete the SFTP and GS side of things because we're not using those either. And that'll just leave us with the data import and the measurement protocol settings. The documents describe these config files and what the settings are, but I'll give you a quick rundown. First of all, the first thing beneath the GA and the MP values are the name of the configuration. You can have multiple configurations to route any data imports to multiple GA properties. They're currently called bar and baz. I'm only going to be using one config file, so I'm going to change those to the word default for both of them so I don't get confused. And then the next thing beneath that in the measurement protocol area, we have a measurement protocol or an MP config object, which contains some variables VT, NI, DL, and TID. Those of you familiar with analytics.js and the measurement protocol will quickly understand what these are. These are the parameters that you want to be sent into GA with the measurement protocol. Now you can change these to whatever you want, but in my example, I am only going to be sending an event, and I'm going to be sending along the segment name with that event. So I'm going to change these. I'm going to change T, which stands for the hit type. I'm going to change that to event. NI can stay because that means it's a non-interactive event. And I'm also going to put in my GA property ID and give the DL, which is the document location, a / Google Tentacles, just so if ever I'm breaking down these events, I can remind myself that they're coming from Google Tentacles. I also add EA, which stands for event action. I'm going to add this so that I know again that the event which is being sent to GA is coming from Google Tentacles. I use the user enriched event, and I'm going to create a category called EC, which is going to be called Google Tentacles. So I know that, again, I can remind myself this data is coming from Google Tentacles, and I'll see the event action as user enriched within the interface. Once you're done, save the file and return back to the console window. Now that we've written our config file, we need to get all these settings into our Firestore database. And there's a handy little script to do that. If you go back to the GitHub page and scroll down, you'll be able to find it by searching for the word upload or update even. And this is the command we need, bash deploy update API config. So type that into the console window, bash deploy.sh, update API config, hit enter, and you'll see it gives you a choice of what the file name is. We've kept with the standard default of config API, so you can use that. Hit enter, and then head over to your Firestore database, and you'll see that the data has been imported and all the settings are there and ready to go. These settings will be read by Tentacles every time it runs, and this is how it knows where to send the data and what event actions and labels to use. That is all the config done. Everything is set up and run. We now need to create the files, or at least a test file, which we're going to upload to the bucket to test everything is working. So go back to GitHub, scroll down to the measurement protocol section, and you'll see an example of what each line in the file looks like. You can see here we've got CID, which is our client ID, as well as some other parameters. So what you're going to do is you're going to copy that line into a text file, and for testing purposes, we're going to replace CID, which is our Google Analytics cookie ID, with a test ID. And the easiest way to do this is to go into Google Analytics, go into the User Explorer report, and pull out your cookie ID, or you can look in your browser and see your GA cookie ID and paste it in. The reason we want to use ours is because we want to test, and we want to be able to quickly test the data. If you were doing this for real, obviously this cookie ID value would have to come from the team that is providing you with these segmentations. Because the hit type we're sending in is an event, we don't need these parameters, the TI and TR. So we're going to replace them with EL, which stands for event label. And here I'm going to specify the name of the segment that this person is going into, in which case it was high, just for dummy data. I also need to put in the dimension that we created earlier, which was dimension 4. So I'm going to type dimension 4, and I'm going to set that value also to the value of high. Again, in reality, these values would come from the people who are doing your segmentation, and they would provide this file to you. But for this case, we're just doing some dummy data. I'm going to copy this as well a few times and change the CIDs a little bit. These aren't real people, but it will just show you the data coming into GA and just give you a bit more of a flavor as to how quickly this works and how efficiently it works. Google Tentacles requires a very specific file name convention for this file. Again, it's all documented on the GitHub page, but essentially you can Call it anything, but it has to have these particular values in it. Firstly, it has to have the word API in capital letters, followed by an open square bracket, followed by the name of the API that you're using, in which case it's MP for us because we're sending it in via the measurement protocol, then a square bracket, then another underscore, then the word config, all lowercase, open square bracket again, and then the name of the configuration file you want to use. If you remember earlier, we changed all our config files to be called default. So this is where we put the word default in this square bracket. Once you've saved the file, go back to Google Cloud Console and open up the storage bucket which we created earlier, or Tentacles created automatically. Within this bucket, you need to create a folder called Outbound. Now, if you changed any of the default settings during your setup, it may not be called Outbound, but you would have had to have typed a different word in for the Outbound folder, so put that there. But if you use the default settings, then Outbound will do just fine. And then in GA, open up the real-time reports so you can see any data coming in. So to test this, you're going to drag your file, which we just saved, into the bucket. And as soon as the bucket is full, Google Tentacles recognizes this and it runs the cloud function to take that file, process it. You'll see if you refresh the bucket, the file has already gone and been moved out into the processed file. Head back over to GA and you'll see the events start to come in. We can see we have 5 events have come in, and it's got our event category and event action that we specified earlier in the setup file. To check everything is working, head into the User Explorer report within Google Analytics and find your client ID. Click on it and this will show you all the activity for this user. Here I can see that I've just done 2 events. This is only because I'm on today, but yesterday was the day where I uploaded my file. And you can see down here in the custom dimensions section, all your user scoped custom dimensions will appear here. And this segment value of high hasn't been picked up by the browser. This is the thing that we set by doing the measurement protocol import. So this tells us that Google Tentacles is working correctly and the values from that file are correctly being pushed into Google Analytics and associated with the correct user. And that's it. You now have a fully automated process and way of uploading data into Google Analytics. There are some additional notes which I would like to point out. Number one, this is an unsupported product. Although Google wrote the code, it's unsupported, so it doesn't mean that there are some bugs in it, so you may need to find your way. If you need help, I would recommend asking one of your developers in your company to help you out, especially someone who's got good knowledge of Google Cloud. The second thing to note is that you still currently have to manually upload your file to cloud storage to kick off this process. What you really want to do is get your developers again to automate that process. So typically the way it would work is either you are calculating all your user attributes offline in some other system that isn't Google Analytics, and once that process has run, normally people use Python or R, it's probably done in the cloud. What you want to do is automatically upload that output file to cloud storage. So get whoever does the analysis in your company, whoever is doing the user segmentation, tell them what file format you need in cloud storage and work with them to get them to upload that file every time they run some analysis. This way, whenever the values change, either hourly or daily, they're probably saving that and giving it to some other departments. Maybe they're uploading it to their email marketing tool. You also just need to tell them, please can you upload it to cloud storage as well. That way, the whole thing will be automated. You don't have to be involved. As soon as they upload it to the cloud storage bucket, you know that data is going to be processed and available within Google Analytics. The third thing you should know is that this is not free. You're running PubSub and you're running Cloud Functions and you're using a storage bucket. Although it isn't that expensive, there will be some additional cost to running that processes. So what I would recommend you do is go into your billing account, make sure that you give it a few days and assess how much it's going to cost you to run this process. If you do it very infrequently, once a month, then it's probably not going to cost you very much. But if you have a process where you're going to update 1 million customers every hour or every day, then it could cost you a fair bit. So make sure you get the permission of whoever pays the bills and chat to them. And you probably need to do a cost benefit analysis to work out what is the effect of having this data in GA. Do the audiences you build and push to DV360 or Google Ads or Google Optimize, are they being used correctly to give you a good return that justifies the cost of the investment? So that is it. If you've enjoyed this type of video, please give it a thumbs up. If you get all this set up and working, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more analytics tips.